Okay, so in this video, we're going to gain more experience still because we need to commit this to memory with constraints and auto layout, and obviously responsive design in general. So here, I want you to download this file. It's available here on this page, SpaceExpo-before. Open it in Figma and follow along for sure. So this is a desktop-based layout. We have 12 columns here set up, and it's something obviously pre-designed, and it works well for desktop. And what we want to do is we want to transform this and structure everything here correctly so that it will be easier for us to deal with when it comes to tablet and phone. So if we move this in, some of the stuff is kind of working, but some of the stuff's not. So let's make the necessary adjustments. Okay. So the first thing we'll do is focus on the navigation and the logo. So the logo, it's obviously positioned top left, which is fine. And how about this over here? It's kind of squishing up. We don't want that. So this isn't really technically a navigation that's been structured properly. It's just kind of thrown on there. It's just for this example, it's fine. We're going to take all 5 of these elements, including the line underneath it, and we are going to create a frame out of it. And then we're going to make sure it is right in top. So let's go ahead and see what happens when we scale this in. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. All right. So next up, we have these 3 elements right here. Actually, I don't really think anything needs to be done with them. They scale out. If you wanted them to behave differently, that's perfectly fine. We could probably take these, we'll frame them up. Let's frame the selection, and we could make it so that it's top right. And then we could also experiment perhaps with other adjustments, like for instance, if we take this and we change top right, perhaps we can center or scale. Again, one of the biggest things is just experimenting with these settings. For now, I'm just going to leave it right here. Now, we do have some work to do in this section right here. We have the headline, and then we have these 2 kind of loose cards, so to speak, and we need to fix those big time. So the first thing we'll work with is we'll work with these cards actually. They're both duplicated, so we just delete this first one. And we're going to select both of these elements. Let's get this and get that tidied up. Select both of those elements, and we're going to right click and create a component out of it. And then we're also going to add an auto layout, which situates these right above each other. Now, if we double click into here to select the individual elements, we want to change fixed width. But before we do that, we're going to have to make other adjustments. So we don't even have to do that right now at this point. I'm thinking ahead a little bit. What we can do is duplicate this, and we'll put this roughly right there. And if we bring back the grid, we can get that spaced up exactly where it needs to be. All right, and we'll hide that. And then we take both of these, and we'll create an auto layout out of those as well by hitting the plus sign. All right, so now we have these elements that are interchangeable. Now, if we take our frame and move it in, it doesn't condense how we want it to. So first, remember this trick. We're going to change this parent container to fixed, and then also, oops, sorry about that, left and right. All right, so what happens now? Nothing. That's because we need to duplicate, or double click rather, in here and select both of these. And then we're going to change this to fixed width, or rather fill container. Sorry about that. And let's see what happens now. All right, so right now they are responsive, but they're overlapping on top of each other, and we don't want that either. So we're going to double click into each individual element, and specifically just the text element. And we're going to change this here to fill container. Change that one to fill container as well. Let's see what happens now. There they go. So that's more or less what we wanted right around here. Okay, next up, this element. We want this to work as well. And so what we could do is take both of these, because this, when it collapses, it's going to overlap on these elements. So we're going to take both of those, and we will add an auto layout on top of that. All right. Now, of course, when we do this, everything breaks. And so we're going to have to do a little bit of work. Again, fixed. And then we will change it to left and right. Double click into here. We're going to want to change that to fill container. And then this element, change that to fill container. And sometimes when you adjust this stuff, we may have to adjust other stuff. They're both at fill container at the component level. So that's good. And then also if we double click into it, that's fill container. And this is fixed type. We're going to see how this works just to see if there's any more adjustments that need to be made. Nope, there aren't. So if we just drag this down a little bit, we'll see how these respond. Now, you might want to have by default a little bit more white space between these elements. So, you know, we could get the grid back, for instance, and move this over here. All right, and see how these respond. And then even still, maybe instead of doing that, we could take this, maybe put it right there. All right, now let's hide the grid. All right, and we can now scale this out and in. Probably want to transfer it or transition it to a tablet right around here, I would say. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do that. So what we'll do, let's expand this just basically to a desktop size here more so. I'm a little bit anal about this. I don't like how these two don't line up on the same column, so let me bring that back. I will just push this out here. We could also probably stand to move this here, maybe move this up. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and duplicate this one. Let's turn this grid off. Let's first adjust this grid. Let's get this in around where we want it to be, like right around here. And then we'll double click, change this to tablet. We're going to adjust this over here to 8, which is pretty standard. And then 80, and then yeah, 20 right there. That'll be good. Okay, so next up, now we have to kind of move things around. Notice this little element here. We could see it's right there. It's a very, just a faint kind of just design element. And so that's a decision that you need to make just based on what is a necessity and what's not. How can we create more room out of elements? So if I hide this real quick, you can see clearly we don't need this element. And so we're just going to reduce the amount of clutter so that we have more space here. Now, obviously, I wouldn't call it clutter in this context. This is more or less just, you know, just to add texture to the design. All right, so now we'll bring this grid back. We're going to move everything to here. Let's move that back up, and then we'll move this out. So we have 8 total columns. We put this at 4. That should work pretty well. Maybe move this back up, and position this here. All right, that works pretty well. Let's see how far we can get in. Yeah, right around there. Now, one of the things you have to ask yourself, is this really enough width for each of these cards? And they're pretty small. So I would argue no. And what we could do is stack them on top of each other to give them the 4-column width. So to do that, what we'll do is just kind of start over here, and we're going to right click and ungroup this selection. We're going to also ungroup this selection. I'll get rid of this, and then we will also, so that we have the access to adjust the auto layout right here, detach the instance of the component. So we'll create a new component after detaching. So to do that, come over here, detach instance, and let's also remove the auto layout just for a second so I can get in here properly and move this around. All right, so now this right here, if we go ahead and we make the auto layout, we can see how it's, that's basically how I want it for now. And then what we can do is right click and create the component. We'll duplicate it underneath, and then also create an auto layout out of this one. So we click plus. All right, so we're not done yet. We're going to take both of these. We'll create an auto layout out of that. And then now we have some work to make sure all of this works. All right, so let's hide that. And let's get started. As we can see, we know this is not going to work properly. So the first step is we're going to change this to fixed and then left and right. And again, not going to really respond at all because we have to adjust the elements inside. So we're going to double click into here. We're going to change this one to a fixed width, not fixed width, but fill container rather. All right. And now if we adjust this, that will respond and push everything down. But this one also isn't responding, it's fixed down there. So let's adjust that. So this is going to be fill container. Double click into here. We'll select both and make sure these are fill container. We can also change this to hug contents. I believe that's the right setting. Sometimes getting these adjusted is a little bit tricky. We'll change this to fill container as well and hug contents. All right, and let's check to see if that's working properly. And it is. There we go. So those little settings are kind of confusing, but once you develop the muscle memory from them, it makes life a lot easier. There we go. So that's good for the tablet setting. Now let's create one last one for maybe when we get kind of close to around, maybe right around here. Now before we do that, I did forget, we can also change the size of the type. So the less width you have, generally speaking, you shrink the scale of like your headlines and such. So what we can do is just take this down from 64 perhaps to 48. That'll kind of fill things out a little bit more. And if you want to maybe center this in between both of those here initially, there we go. Actually, I kind of like it up a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and duplicate this. We're going to double click here to change this to phone, or yeah, phone, mobile phone. And let's delete this. Let's right click and get Iconify out here. And menu, kind of like this menu right here, or this menu. We're going to drag it on there. We're going to make it white. So let's get this over here and make that white under selection colors. Get our grid out and make the real quick adjustments of 4, and I think we'll go with a margin of 30. That's good. Again, move things where they need to be. This can be a little bit larger as well. Around 48 by 48 would be fine. I think mine's at 42. Make sure this is top right. There we go. We'll adjust this over here. Now, here's the thing. Right now, we don't want a 2-column approach. Right now, this is 2 columns. We have 1 and then 2. We want to stack these on top of each other. So for now, we're going to move this over here, just off the side, and let us go ahead and expand this all the way. And we're going to center things. Now, this is a real large phone. Let's get that in here closer. Now, what we'll do is toggle this off so we can see things a little bit more clearly. We're going to take this. We'll center that type. And there we go. That's pretty good. You could even take this and kind of create this approach, except center the icons. You could do that if you wish, but really it's a small icon, so this would still work here at a smaller size. So those are both exactly fine, exactly as they need to be. All right, so what about the frame? So, or this right here. I think it might be interesting to move this down and move these over here. Let's give a little bit of white space between them. And let's scale them down, all 3. Maybe right around there. We want to make sure when we move this, we get equal white space. Right now this is not inside the frame, so what is this? The phone frame right there. There we go. So now we'll get the, there we go. Now we have equal white space between them. And we'll take these three, let's frame them. And then also let's center that. Maybe put this right around there. Now by default, what happens when we scale? It doesn't stay in the center. So we could center this, center top. And if you wanted it to be like that, like this, obviously you're not going to be out here because this is in the range where the layout will look like this at a tablet. So right here is pretty much where the phone probably would start. And coming in like this, this is fine as well. If you wanted to, you can make them kind of shrink or something like that, but this is all fine as is. And I would say that this is a pretty good adaptation of making this particular layout responsive.